In today's video, we're going to continue our 2019 NHL offseason plan series, and we're discussing the Minnesota Wild, and that's coming up next. Welcome back to Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So welcome back to the 2019 NHL offseason plan series. If you're new to this series, we break it down into 3 segments. Segment 1, we're going to do an 18-19 season recap, take a look at some key metrics for the team, as well as their top players, discuss any changes or trades they made throughout the season as well. Segment 2, we're going to take a look at their salary cap situation for the summer, any pending RFAs, UFAs, or any contracts they need to handle this year. Thirdly, we're going to discuss what moves I feel are most important that this team make to move the team in the right direction and be more competitive for next season. If you're new to this series, there will be a playlist up here in the YouTube cards linking the rest of the teams that have already been covered. We're getting quite a ways through this series now. If the team you're looking for is not there yet, it will be shortly. There's only a few teams left to cover in this series. Now let's jump into an 18-19 season recap for the Minnesota Wild. So as you can see, the Minnesota Wild didn't have a fantastic year. They finished with a 37-36-9 record, 83 points, 7th place in the Central Division, missed the playoffs. First year with the new GM Paul Fenton at the helm here, trying to analyze his team and make some moves, and he certainly did make a fair bit through the year, which we'll get into here momentarily. Now let's take a look at some of the key metrics here for the team. Their special teams were actually pretty good this year, 20.3% on the power play for 14th best. I mean, it's not crazy high, but it's certainly above average, which is good to see. The PK was excellent, 81.7%. for 7th best. So special teams were not an issue for this team this year. Goals for, however, were. They certainly had times where they certainly struggled to score quite a bit. Only put up 211 goals for the year, which was the 28th highest scoring team in the league. So not far from the bottom, so that certainly needs great improvement. Goals against, however, remain strong, 237 against for 13th best. So overall team defense between goals against and the PK, definitely the strong suit of this Wild team, which has certainly been a trend for them over recent years. Now let's take a look at some of their key individual performance, including their starting goaltending and top scorers. Starting goalie Devan Dubnyk continued to put up fairly decent numbers, especially considering the team's record. He finished with a 31, 28, and 6 record, a .913 save percentage, and a 2.54 goals against average. So overall, I must say, Dubnyk didn't do too badly here, considering the team in front of him. Overall, team defense was pretty solid, but where they struggled to score a lot of times, he certainly gave them a chance to win more often than not. Taking a look at some of their scoring leaders here, Zach Parise led the way with 61 points. Next up, veteran Eric Stahl with 52 points, followed by their top defensive output of Ryan Suter, 47 points, followed by another defender, Jared Spurgeon, 43 points, and then Jason Zucker, who put up 21 goals and 42 points overall. So obviously, as you can see there, 2 of their top 4 scorers from the blue line. That certainly is an issue. They need to have more forwards who can put up points and put the puck in the net more often. Certainly a glaring area for this team to address this year. Now let's take a look at some of the key trades and changes this team made throughout the season, as Paul Fenton certainly found himself to be a busy GM most of the season. Now taking a look at his track record here for trades, he traded Charlie Coyle to the Boston Bruins for Ryan Donato and some picks. Overall, that's not too bad of a deal because Donato does have a lot of potential, but Charlie Coyle right now is with the Bruins in the Stanley Cup final on his way to possibly winning a Stanley Cup, and has been a key acquisition for them. He's fit in quite nicely. So far, the Bruins are certainly winning that trade, but the Wild certainly have the potential to even that up if they can get good production out of Ryan Donato moving forward. He did look pretty decent in a few times that he got into their lineup here near the end of the season. Of course, he also traded fairly young forward Nino Niederreiter to the Carolina Hurricanes for Victor Rask. So far, that trade's been a disaster. Rask has continued to struggle for the Wild, and Niederreiter's been lighting it up for the Hurricanes. So overall, that trade's not looking good right now. He also traded Mikael Granlund to the Nashville Predators for Kevin Fiala. So far, Granlund did produce pretty well for the Predators, so I must say, right now, I'm going to lean towards Nashville winning that trade. Kevin Fiala, however, is a young forward that I think has a lot of potential, and long term here, that deal might very well work out for them. So I'm not going to give him a bad grade on that trade. But another veteran forward who's not overly old, who can still produce, gone out the door for the Wild. Of course, they signed college free agent Nico Sturm, so that certainly looks like it could work out for them. Now he's already going to be an RFA. It was just a short-term 1-year contract because of his age, which is already burned, and now he needs a new contract already. And of course, they also acquired Brad Hunt from the Vegas Golden Knights, who's a pending UFA defenseman. Didn't do too badly. He's kind of one of those guys that flies under the radar, but overall, I like Hunt, especially for his offensive upside. I think he's a pretty decent puck mover and didn't do too badly, but it's certainly debatable if he returns. Now let's move forward to segment 2, where we look at the salary cap situation and any pending contracts that are expiring this summer. Now, taking a look at the Wild's RFA list here, there's certainly some decent players here that need to be qualified, and I fully expect them to be, including Kevin Fiala, who I just mentioned they acquired from the Predators. He's had a pretty decent start to his career, but certainly could be more consistent. They've got Joel Eriksson-Ek as well, Pontus Aberg, Ryan Donato, and newly acquired free agent college player Nico Sturm, who I said signed a one-year deal due to his age and is already an RFA. So I wouldn't be surprised to see all of these players retain. Aberg, I wouldn't say is a for sure given thing, but I do think it'd be wise for them to hang on to him. I do think he has some potential there. On the UFA side, they've got Eric Fair, Brad Hunt, and Anthony Boteto. So it's debatable if any or all of those guys return. I think as a possibility they probably move on from all of them, but I guess we'll see here how the Wild proceed. The overall cap situation is as follows. They've got 15 players under contract for the coming year for $61.5 million in contracts, which gives them $21.4 million in space. And based on the players that are needing new deals here, obviously there's nobody there that's going to demand a big price tag. So they certainly have salary cap flexibility. So it's just a matter of how they decide to proceed with that. Now let's jump over and take a look at the changes I feel they need to make in order to get better and move this team forward and more competitive for next year. For starters, like I said, they need to be able to score more goals. Now, of course, one of their top goal scorers, Jason Zucker, has been mentioned heavily in trade rumors. It was really close to being traded to the Calgary Flames at the trade deadline, and then they had a deal lined up with the Penguins involving Phil Kessel going to Minnesota, which Kessel obviously nixed with his no-trade clause in his contract. They seem to be pretty aggressive in wanting to trade Zucker. I'm not really sure why. He brings a lot of energy. He's a great skater. He can put the puck in the net. He just signed a 5-year extension last year. I'm not really sure. That doesn't make sense to me. A lot of the players they're trading out are like in that mid-20 range that are kind of hitting their prime years, but they're retaining a lot of their other veteran guys. They recently re-signed Eric Stahl as well last offseason, so it's just debatable on how some of these moves that Fenton has done here. But we'll see here. But they need to score more, and he needs to continue making some trades here to kind of reignite their top 6 forward group. Acquiring a guy like Phil Kessel will certainly go a long ways in doing that. And even though that deal was nixed by Kessel's no-trade clause, many believe it's not a complete no, that it's never going to happen here. That could be revisited later in the summer if the Penguins can't find another deal. Some still feel that there's a possibility Kessel could change his mind and that deal might be back on the table later on. So we'll see. But either way, they need scoring and they need it in a bad way. In my opinion, they also need to decide the long-term future of their goaltending situation. Devin Dubnyk, who's been their starter for the last number of years, is a pending unrestricted free agent, so he's going into the final year of his deal. They need to decide if they're going to run with Dubnyk for a little bit longer here, and if so, maybe work out a contract extension for a couple more years. If not, then they need to consider making a trade. So if I'm them, I'm either trading him or I'm going to extend him, and they need to decide what options are out there and what's the best way to proceed with that. I'm not sure they have a goalie in their system who's ready to really take over yet, so they need to sort that out longer term. Dubnyk's been pretty good for them, but obviously as each year goes by, you do expect some of these players to decline. Do they really want to sign him longer term? So I wouldn't completely rule out the possibility that they do sign him to an extension, but either way, they need to decide what the long-term projection is in that position. This is very important. And as we discussed earlier in this video, Paul Fenton's trade record to me so far hasn't been great. He needs to make sure he wins these trades. He needs forwards coming in who can score. He needs players coming in who can be quick and skilled. And so far, that's just not been the case for the most part here. Not completely. I do like guys like Fiala and Donato. Another player who's key to watch is Jared Spurgeon this summer. It's obviously possible that he gets extended, and it's also possible he gets traded as well. He's been a player that's mentioned numerous times in trade rumors, but many believe that they would prefer to extend him. So I guess we'll see if they can come to terms or not. He's certainly been a very important player for them on their back end, produces a fair bit of offense from that as well. So we'll see, but he's also getting up there in age. So they just seem more inclined to commit to their older players, and they're trading out all these guys that are like in their mid-20s, which I find a little bit puzzling. Like I said, I'm just not quite sure exactly the direction of Paul Fenton here, but either way, I'd like to see Minnesota go out and add a big-time scorer to their lineup to really have this team move forward into next season. So let me know your thoughts and opinions on what the Minnesota Wild need to do to get better and more competitive for next season, and we'll continue the conversation in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy, so stay tuned for the remainder of the teams covering in this series. There's a few left and coming here in the coming days. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.